how much do you really know about wine? Whether you're a novice or a self-proclaimed connoisseur, part of the beauty and wonder of wine is that there is always more to learn. You might know just enough to determine whether the vintage you're sampling is sweet or dry, or your palate might even be keen enough to identify the types of grapes used in its production, or even the exact year in which it was made. But to truly appreciate wine, you must go deeper than taste, color, or vintage. The more you know about what you are experiencing, the more enjoyable the experience becomes. It has often been said that one can get a taste of a culture by sampling its wine. Certain European areas, such as Champagne in France, are famous for their wines born from their vineyards. Each wine is an individual, reflecting the culture in which it was produced, the people who produced it, and those who love to drink it. But what about wines produced in Pennsylvania? From the humid summers and icy winters in the Lake Erie region to the milder seasons found in the South and West, Pennsylvania is fortunate to be able to grow more than 30 types of grapes. And the result is an incredible variety in Pennsylvania wines, perhaps more of a variety than in any other wine region. Pennsylvania is home to more than 75 wineries, and more than 500,000 people from all over the world visit Pennsylvania winery tasting rooms each year. What is it that attracts so many people to experience our state's culture through its wines? Pennsylvania's wines are award-winning, varied, and wine drinkers from the novice to the connoisseur can easily find something that pleases his or her own palate. But it goes deeper than taste. When experiencing wineries in Pennsylvania, visitors not only taste exquisite wines, they also get a taste of the families that harvested the grapes. They learn the stories, they see the obstacles, and they hear the music that makes each winery a destination unto itself. In Pennsylvania, wine is much more than a beverage. It is an experience. In the 6th century BC, ancient Greeks began the tradition of the toast, believing that if everyone sipped the same wine at the same time before a meal, no one would dare poison it. Today, a toast symbolizes great beginnings: the beginning of a meal, the beginning of a marriage, the beginning of a journey. Before we embark on our journey to experience Pennsylvania wineries, let us raise our glasses in a toast. Though the road may be long and the subject sometimes dry, may our journey be sweet, and may our hearts and heads be light. We begin suitably at the beginning, at one of the first wineries to exist in Pennsylvania, Presque Isle Wine Cellars. Pennsylvania has 7 wine regions, which makes touring Pennsylvania wineries simple and easy. Our first stop is here in the Lake Erie region, with a visit to the Presque Isle Wine Cellars. In 1958, Doug Moorhead and his friend Bill Connerth started the Lake Erie Wine Club. But Doug and Bill ran into some obstacles in pursuing their hobby.
It occurred to Bill Connerth and myself that it was tough to find sources of supplies and equipment. I had a couple connections with some of the wineries in New York State that we were selling grapes to. And so we looked into combining purchases, and it occurred to us that there were economic advantages for us to start a business and actually primarily mail order to cater to amateur winemakers.
Their early business was not quite the fulfillment of Doug and Bill's plans. The law was not on their side, but the friends started a campaign to change that.
The big problem when we started the business was that the only place you could sell wine in Pennsylvania was through the state store system. As a result, we had no industry. But the legislature in 1968 adopted our proposals and got the legislation, the so-called Limited Winery Act, which made it possible, and we now have an industry.
The significance of the Limited Wineries Act cannot be understated. According to wine expert Barry Grossman, it was because of the efforts set into motion at Presque Isle Wine Cellars that experiencing Pennsylvania wineries is possible today.
The Limited Wineries Act allows wineries to make up to 50,000 gallons of wine from Pennsylvania fruit. This allows the growers to sell their wares at the farms. As a result, Presque Isle wine cellars and nearby Pinchot Winery were the first to be licensed, both making wine in the fall of 1969 and opening their wineries in 1970.
The wines produced at Presque Isle wine cellars are varied to meet their customers' desires, featuring a menu from very sweet to very dry. But the main focus is on the serious wine drinker.
We've always had more interest in the dry European grapes, looking at that as the best possible quality we could come up with. But the other wines do a couple things. One, a lot of people when they're introduced to wine are not ready to drink dry, oaky table wines. They will drink the sweeter ones, but if they stay with it and learn to drink with food, many of them gravitate to the dry wines eventually.
But even while their main focus today is producing quality wines, Presque Isle Wine Cellars is still dedicated to its original clientele, the amateur winemakers.
But I think it's very healthy. The amateurs who have gone to great lengths to make better wines have sometimes shown us commercially things that we ought to be doing ourselves, and so there's feedback both directions. And whereas there's competition, I would say it's healthy, and it's also in our industry kind of generous.
And just as Presque Isle Wine Cellars made enormous strides in making the Pennsylvania wine industry what it is today with the passage of the Limited Wineries Act, Doug is still interested in furthering the region's presence.
Napa Valley didn't become famous in a year. It took a long time, and it's reached justifiable fame because of the quality of the wines. We have the potential, and if we have the personnel and the time to do it, as I say, my hope is to see a day when the Lake Erie area will be a very famous region.
We leave the sandy shores of Lake Erie behind for the rolling hills of the Laurel Highlands Wine Trail, first stopping at Christian W. Clay Winery in Chalk Hill. Studies have shown that drinking wine is beneficial to your health. And what better way to make a case for the health benefits of wine than to tell the story of John and Sharon Clay, owners and founders of Christian W. Clay Winery in Chalk Hill. Leaving his medical practice behind, Dr. John Clay convinced his wife to leave the big city life and her own career behind.
Well, explaining a little bit about my background. I was a dental hygienist who wanted to be an artist. While living in New York, I went back to school for art and happily found that the chemistry from the dental hygiene gave me a good background for the winemaking. And being an artist, this gave me an outlet for my creativity, which included using the whole farm, the whole 215 acres, as a blank canvas in which to create different events and images.
Sharon's work developed into a masterpiece, and Christian W. Clay Winery became known for the events that take place there each year. The murder mystery dinner theater, steak cookouts, and hay rides to wine and dine in the woods make wine tasting events appealing and accessible to wine connoisseurs of all levels. But at the focal point of the masterpiece is the wine. And as Sharon explains, wine is not only pleasing to the palate, it is the palate, adding color and depth to foods.
Wine and food are meant to go together. And just as blending the wine is similar to matching, not matching, but blending a color to get a richer, more complex color, when you pair wine and food, you're experiencing a richer experience because they enhance each other.
Although Christian W. Clay Winery is a destination in itself, the winery is part of the Laurel Highlands Winery Trail, which offers even more reason to make the trip to Chalk Hill.
There are 4 of us wineries here in the Laurel Highlands. The Laurel Highlands are really rich in historic sites like Fort Necessity and Jumonville Glen, where the French and Indian War began. We have 2 Frank Lloyd Wright houses here, Falling Water and Kentuck Knob. And there's hiking and biking and whitewater rafting. So the Laurel Highlands Winery Trail offers people the opportunity to do history, culture, fine dining, lodging, and travel around to 4 wineries. It makes for a perfect weekend.
In so many ways, it is perfect, with picturesque rolling hills, green fields, and fruited vines as far as the eye can see. It's the perfect combination of art and science that gives Christian W. Clay Winery its universal appeal and exquisite taste.
People come to a winery for many reasons. You can go to a state store to get a bottle of wine. You go off the beaten path to a winery for a touch of the romance, to learn a little bit. They're looking for a little of that old-fashioned personal touch. And we can offer that here in Pennsylvania.
From Chalk Hill, it's a scenic drive up Route 281 to Glades Pike Winery in Somerset. People often develop new tastes when sampling wine. For example, sweet wine drinkers, after time, may develop a liking for dry wines. But for one group of friends, wine tasting gave them a taste for success. Meet Steve and Karen Adelman of Glades Pike Winery in Somerset.
We were part of a group of home winemakers, about 8 of us, 8 couples, and the guys would use it as an excuse to get together, taste each other's wares, have a good time. And then once a year we'd treat our wives to a weekend out. We'd head either up into New York at Finger Lakes or over into Ohio, down into Virginia for a weekend and hit a bunch of wineries, and we always kidded about starting the winery when we got back.
Steve, who just finished his MBA at the time, put together a sample business plan for a winery, and the kidding soon turned into planning. The group of homemakers brought their dream to fruition by renovating an old dairy barn into a winery.
But Steve and Karen soon found that they were looking at the winery as a serious business rather than a sideline.
As time went on, we realized this is not a hobby anymore. This is a real life business here, and we needed to manage it more like a business.
Since then, Glades Pike has outgrown its original location in the barn, as well as its owner's original expectations. The new location opened in October of 2002 and provides more suitable conditions for the winery.
The downstairs is built specifically for the winery from a standpoint of, we built 3/4 of it underground, so we have the cave or cellar effect. So we have steady temperatures both in the spring and summer, which we feel is very, very important to a good quality wine. And then we have the second floor, which the winery rents out the front part of it for a tasting room that is about at least twice as big as what we had over at the barn.
The new, larger location affords Glades Pike an increased storage capacity of about 16,000 gallons, plus the room to dream even more.
And with the building of this, the construction of this building, we were able to do start a separate company to do a banquet hall facility.
With the added space, the Adelmans now offer wedding receptions, banquets, and other events at Glades Pike. But even considering all of the growth that Glades Pike has experienced over the years, at the heart of their business still remains the wine. Visitors can sample Glades Pike Winery's 18 different varieties, including wines that have been awarded over 65 medals from state, national, and international competitions. From tasting to dreaming, and from dreaming to tasting success, Glades Pike is a lot like its wine. It just keeps getting better with time. Next, we're off to the Lower Susquehanna region and the Adams County Winery in Ortania. This is part of the splendor of Pennsylvania. Open fields transformed into bountiful acres of farmland and fruit. But these beautiful open fields were not always so peaceful. The fields near Gettysburg are famed for the Civil War battle that took place there. But today, the fields are also famed for their wines, thanks to places like Adams County Winery. The winery, owned by Civil War buff John Cram, pays homage to the rich history of the area.
Our hallmark wine is called Tears of Gettysburg. The Campbells released that on the 125th anniversary of the battle in commemoration of the people who fought and died here. And it is our most popular wine, so we continue to do that. And we have another couple wines that are named, or very similarly named, after famous characters. One is called Red Butler, and the other one Sweet Scarlet.
Adams County Winery also features the Gettysburg Collection, a product line of vinifera wines with labels featuring the Pennsylvania Monument, which is located on the Gettysburg battlefield.
John's keen interest in the Civil War is in fact what led him and his wife Catherine to the Adams County area on the 4th of July in 1998.
Well, we came here about 5 years ago. We were living in Washington, D.C., and we came out at the invitation of some friends to attend the dedication of a plaque out on the battlefield. And during our stay here, we were driving to the west, and we noticed a winery sign. So we stopped in because we like to visit wineries. And when we talked to the owner, he indicated that the place was for sale. And we, in essence, said, we'll take it, because this is a gorgeous area. We're in south central Pennsylvania. It's beautiful, and I like to make wine.
Adams County Winery is quite a destination, offering award-winning wines and several events, including free concerts and an annual art show and sale. But it is perhaps the passion of the owner, John Cram, that makes Adams County Winery the attraction that it has become.
It's almost a magical experience to see the vines every year going from what appears to be a hacked back, closely cropped or closely cut back piece of vine, and see the fruit develop, see the whole plant develop, and put some labor into it, and then to pick those grapes and bring them in and turn them into something that people enjoy. It's a magical process, and I love it.
Rich history and a blossoming future. Adams County Winery is truly at the heart of Pennsylvania's wineries. From Adams County to Bainbridge and Nisley Vineyards and Winery Estate. From nation to nation, wine has long been a constant, a bridge between cultures. But for one Pennsylvania bridge builder, winemaking developed into an empire all his own. Judy Nisley of Nisley Vineyards and Winery Estate in Lancaster County explains her father's journey from building bridges to making wine.
Well, Nisley Vineyards was founded by my father, J. Richard Nisley, as basically as a project when he retired from his business of building bridges. He had owned a company and had a lot of employees, and what they did was build highway bridges. So when he got close to retirement age, he decided that he wanted to do something different. Two things coincided. One was his retiring, and the other was the passage of the Limited Wineries Act of Pennsylvania.
Now that it was legal for Pennsylvania wineries to make and sell their wares, Judy's father knew what he wanted to do with the historic land and barn he had purchased in the 60s. But perhaps what had originally appealed to the retired bridge builder was the old stone bridge that spanned the creek running through the land. Those stone arches are now a trademark for Nisley Vineyards and Winery Estate. But it is certainly not just the reflection of the bridge builder's occupational passion that brings people to this unique winery.
We have a real variety, because we learned, very early on that we couldn't make just dry wines. And most wineries in Pennsylvania know this. That's why we have 24 wines. And it also includes fruit wines. Now, not many wineries make fruit wines, but we're very fortunate to have good fruit production in this area. So we also make several of those are fruit wines, like black raspberry, cherry, apple.
In addition to the wines, which have won numerous international competitions, Nisley Vineyards also offers a unique opportunity for visitors who would like to take a tour on their own.
We developed a written description with photographs, and we put the photographs in the book and with little signs and arrows as to where people go, and so they are basically self-guided tours.
Yet another bridge between cultures has long been music, and Nisley Vineyards has been bringing people together with music and dance for decades.
We've been doing this for about 21 years, and We started off very small. We called it Moonlight and Melody, and it was a dance, and people could come and dance. And now we have a concert format with many of the people sitting and listening, and they have so much fun. They bring their picnic suppers, they bring candles, they bring comfortable lounge chairs. Some people bring tables, people bring flowers, and other people just show up with a, with a McDonald's burger.
As the sun goes down, it is clear that even with the unique tours and events, Nisley Vineyards and Winery Estate was built upon one solid product, incredible wine. And all it took was the vision of a bridge maker to build upon such a strong Pennsylvania keystone. Next, we travel south to the Pennsylvania-Maryland border and visit Naylor Wine Cellars. To understand the philosophy behind Naylor Wine Cellars in York County, simply begin by reading the writing on the wall. This mural, painted by Pennsylvania artist Wayne Fetro in 2002, illustrates Naylor's formula for making fine wines.
It's really been a great promotional thing for us. It attracts a lot of people, and people come in and know it just for that reason. They come in, bring their cameras along, and take pictures of it.
In addition to the mural, Naylor Wine Cellars uses many creative tactics to demystify wine and to make it appealing to the general public. Events such as the Summer Sounds concerts and dances attract hundreds of visitors to the winery. Naylor Pavilion, where Summer Sounds are held, offers undercover seating for up to 250 people and outdoor seating for hundreds more, all against a beautiful backdrop of vineyards and trees.
Marketing is the name of the game in the wine business. When you're small and you're selling retail, you want to attract people to your winery, so you do anything you can. The Summer Sounds with the dance bands and the labels that tell a story and things like that are what attract people here.
Naylor's wine labels indeed tell stories. Take Golden Grenadier, for example.
We were working very hard in the winery that night, and it was like midnight or thereabout, just getting finished up, and trying to relieve the tiredness and the frustration of pressing some Niagara grapes. Toward the end, we were sort of lobbing them into the crusher like hand grenades. There's a bunch of, Niagara looked like a hand grenade. They have the same shape, like an old-time World War I hand grenades. We call it golden hand grenade for the white, and for the red we call ruby hand grenade.
When the names Golden Hand Grenade and Ruby Hand Grenade were rejected by the ATF in Washington, Dick renamed the wine Golden Grenadier, and it has been exploding in sales ever since. In addition to the creative names for approximately 40 different popular and award-winning wines, there's more to the fine print on a Naylor label than just the Surgeon General's warning.
It's on the ones my mom liked, which are generally the sweeter wines and fruit wine. And I put in there a tribute to Mom, and I just told a story about what my mom is. Not just what she is to me, but what she is to everybody. I'm trying to say you should love your Lord, and you should keep yourself physically fit, and you should love your neighbors, and love your work, and love a glass of wine. And I think these things all go together.
Creativity, philosophy, and of course love. With ingredients like these, it's no wonder that Naylor Wine Cellars is a favorite destination among Pennsylvania's wineries. The historic Philadelphia countryside region is our next stop as we visit and tour Chad's Ford Winery. In European countries, learning to appreciate wine is a lifelong journey, beginning in childhood. Eric Miller, owner of Chad's Ford Winery, grew up with this very European outlook and never saw a reason to wean himself off the bottle.
My first experience with wine are actually result of my dad's keen enthusiasm for wine. He was a real wine aficionado. So at the age of about 7 or 8, we had wine every night. But my father's idea of fun with wine was he would he'd blindfold me and I had to tell him whether it was white or red or Burgundy or Bordeaux or Pinot Noir or Cabernet. It got to be a lot of fun. And I'd win a nickel or something like that. So wine was always fun for me. I preferred milk at the time, but wine was fun.
Wine never ceased to be fun for Eric Miller. His father opened the first farm winery in New York State in 1970. And it was there that Eric first learned to grow grapes and to make wine. It is also where Eric met his wife, Lee, all thanks to their common passion for wine.
I was involved in the publication end of the wine business, doing wine books, wine magazine. And we met, actually, when I was writing a story about Eric for that wine magazine. We decided in the early 80s that we wanted to find the best growing area in the East Coast. We looked at Long Island, Virginia, everything that there was at the time. And we didn't think of Pennsylvania in the beginning because it was a controlled state and the only controlled state left. So marketing-wise, it wasn't that appealing. But we found here the best grape growing areas that we thought were the best grape growing areas in the East Coast. And we decided that, wines are made in the vineyard. We came here because we thought this is where the great wines on the East Coast would come from.
They were right. Chad's Ford is making its mark on the industry with award-winning wines, and the Millers are making their mark on new wine connoisseurs every day. Tasting and guided tours are available, and special classes are held at the winery on wine appreciation, champagne, and wine of other cultures. Just as the love of a wine is a sentiment that Eric learned from his father, gaining a true appreciation for wine goes beyond recognizing the delicious flavor.
Well, there's a couple of reasons for drinking wine. The most important one is pure fun, but another one is sentiment and other things you associate with wine, and for me that's really important. Sometimes I drink a bottle of wine and it reminds me of my dad, and it tastes great, even if it's not very good.
Just as Eric grew up with wine, Pennsylvania is also growing up with regard to the wines produced here. It is the mission of wineries like Chad's Ford to introduce and educate wine connoisseurs about the unique wines of Pennsylvania.
When you're selling a product that's not really well known, and we all know that in Pennsylvania, that we're not the West Coast, we're the new part of the wine industry, the exciting part, the growing part, but until we reach that peak where everybody knows and they really want the wines, we need to educate people and we need to show them that wine is wine and the grapes don't know where they're being grown, and we can make really good wines in this region.
From Chad's Ford, we travel north and east to Buckingham Valley Vineyards. Sometimes college dreams are born in the dorm room and not in the classroom. For Jerry Forrest, Buckingham Valley Vineyards was a student's daydream come true.
Well, I went to the University of Pennsylvania, and my roommate and best friend was a young man from Spain. And we used to sit around drinking wine and playing guitars and dreaming about what we'd do someday when we graduated. And we decided we should become winemakers because we didn't sing that well, and we could never become musicians.
Jerry and his old friend Vladimir Guerrero went separate ways after graduation, started careers, and decided that what they really wanted out of life was to fulfill their old college dream, to make wine. The friends bought 5 acres of property and planted grapevines. Eventually, Vladimir went back to Europe, leaving Jerry and his wife Kathy to make a business of the winery. But after 14 years of working in several lucrative jobs in corporate America, Jerry decided that it was time to get back to basics.
I worked for Weyerhaeuser, General Foods, and several other large corporations. And I retired when I was 40. Not because I was wealthy, but because I was tired of working in big business and working for other people. We took a dramatic pay cut to come here and live full-time on the vineyard and on the winery. But that was more important than money or prestige or position. So yeah, lifestyle is number one. Winemaking is my life.
This return to basics lifestyle is also reflected in the wines of Buckingham Valley.
We're here to enjoy what we do, And in order to do that, you've got to take time to sell the roses and the grapes and whatever, and we can only do that, we find, by automating and by using the most modern equipment available.
Even with all of the technology that is used at Buckingham Valley, the winemaking process is still completely natural.
We don't use ion exchange units, and we don't use chemicals, and we don't use additives and flavorings and things like that. It's still about as basic as you can get.
In keeping with the Back to Basics theme, Buckingham Valley is somewhat different from many other wineries in Pennsylvania.
We're one of the few wineries in the state now that doesn't do festivals, doesn't do special events. We don't do competitions. We don't do a lot of things because it doesn't fit within our personal lifestyle and our goal. I came here to grow grapes, to make wine, and to live happily ever after.
Fortunately, the wines of Buckingham Valley are enough to attract thousands of visitors every year. More than 45,000 gallons of wine are produced at Buckingham Valley, with at least 14 varieties to try in the tasting room.
I think if I won a lottery tomorrow for $50 million, I would continue to make wine and enjoy it and give it away. I don't care about selling wine. I enjoy growing and making it. Fortunately, thank God, it sells, and it sells well. But that's not my object. My objective is to enjoy making it and drinking it occasionally. So I admit, it's a very strange philosophy for a businessman and a Wharton graduate and a Pennsylvania wine owner, but that's just the way it is.
From historic Philadelphia, we go north to the Lehigh Valley and Berks County region to visit the Franklin Hill Vineyards in Bangor. Sometimes a woman's touch is all it takes to turn lemons into lemonade, or in this case, to turn grapes into wine. The story of Franklin Hill Vineyards is best reflected in the ups and downs of its owner, Elaine Austin. Married in the 60s with all the idealism of the Woodstock generation, Elaine and her husband desired to live off the land. Although the couple did not know anything about farming, they purchased a 200-year-old farmhouse and 40 acres of land and planted their dreams in Franklin Hill Vineyards. But the couple's relationship soon began to wither.
That beautiful marriage from the 60s crumbled. And by 1985, we were divorced. Only 4 years after the winery, or actually 3 years after the winery was opened. And I was devastated because here I am out in the country with 2 little children and I didn't know what to do. At this point, I had one employee working for me. Her name's Bonnie Peischer. And she was right out of high school. She was blessed with twins and she needed a diversion. And so I asked her to give me a couple days and a week. And we got a phone call from the Pennsylvania Wine Association saying that we won 2 gold medals and a silver medal that year. And we were jumping up and down, and to me, I felt that that's God's way of telling me that maybe I should stay in the wine business and that I was having some success.
Needless to say, Elaine decided to keep the winery. But for a mother of 2 young children, this was no easy task. Understanding all too well the amount of time and commitment it takes to care for young children, Elaine set about sharing her good fortune with other young mothers along her country road.
And I have to say, when I was a single mom now, and I decided how hard it was to find a job where your employer was had compassion for the family. So one day when all the women were putting their children on the school bus, I looked to see who was staying home, and I knocked on their door. I introduced myself and I said, would you like to work a few hours a day at the winery? And now I have 7 women who live on Franklin Hill Road that decided that we all put our children first, and they come to work after the school bus leaves. Before the children come home, they're home.
Over the years, the women of Franklin Hill helped the winery to reach its full potential. When Franklin Hill opened in 1982, Elaine was able to make only 1,000 gallons in a year. Today, the winery produces up to 15,000 gallons of 23 different wines.
In addition to new wines and increased production, Franklin Hill also added several events to their calendar. Customer appreciation days, hay wagon rides, and grape stomping contests allow visitors to experience the winery in new and different ways. Elaine also encourages visitors to pack a lunch and enjoy a peaceful picnic in her beautiful vineyards. As a stop on the Lehigh Valley Wine Trail, tourists enjoy wine tasting and food pairing events at each of the participating wineries. Like Elaine's children, Franklin Hill Vineyards has grown and matured throughout its 25 years of existence, and it's all thanks to a mother's love. From Bangor to New Tripoli for a visit to Blue Mountain Vineyards. Nestled in the beauty of the Blue Mountains, Joe and Vicki Greff had to decide what to do with the 38 acres of pristine land they had purchased. At first, the beauty of the area inspired a holiday spirit.
I think that when we first bought this, of course, we had no thought of a vineyard, much less a winery. In fact, the first year we were out here, I planted Christmas trees. And I thought, that's not for me. And we had
He came in one day and said, this is too much work. Let's grow grapes. I looked at him like he was crazy.
Well, yeah, but see, the thing is that I do a little more knowledge about grapes, too, than I did about Christmas trees. So I thought that would be the more appropriate way of going, and it was.
Yes, it definitely was the right decision for the Greffs. Today, Blue Mountain Vineyards produces several award-winning wines and is known for many events held there throughout the year.
We have a lot of nice events. We do a barrel tasting every year, a candlelight barrel tasting. And people come out and we take them downstairs, candlelit, and they can taste out of the barrel the new vintages. We also have music every Sunday, entertainment, acoustic entertainment on our outdoor or indoor deck.
Due to Blue Mountain's great success over the years, the Greffs recently purchased another plot of land where they plan to open a new vineyard and winery. The Frederick Leeser Farm, soon to be Leeser Lake Vineyards, has significant historical value.
Why the property is so significant from a historical standpoint is that Frederick Leeser was a Swiss farmer that lived out in this area. One of the few that had survived the massacres of the 1700s, and had been selling applejack or fermented apples in Philadelphia on the night of the Battle of Brandywine.
Leeser's close proximity to the battle and his friendly trade of selling applejack led the American soldiers to ask him to volunteer his horses and wagons in the secretive transport of the Liberty Bell from Philadelphia to Allentown. This made Leeser an overnight Revolutionary War hero.
It is precisely these kinds of stories that lend true color to the experience of Pennsylvania wineries.
I think it's very interesting going around to the different vineyards and talking with the different, a lot of them like to talk to the different owners and find out how they do things and how they started, the story.
In Pennsylvania, we are starting to get recognition as the wine industry. Until recently, no one ever thought of Pennsylvania as having wine. Good quality wine, let's say. And as time is starting to go on now with the development of more and more vineyards and wineries in the state, hopefully that image will change. So if people get around to visit, they're finding out, hey, Pennsylvania does make good quality product, can compete on a national as well as an international basis.
We think they're both right. Central Pennsylvania is our next stop for a tour of the Upper Susquehanna region. First stopping at Shade Mountain Winery in Middleburg. Carl Zimmerman never imagined when he purchased this 19th century barn that it would eventually turn into a popular destination for wine drinkers.
The winery's been open for approximately 4 years, and we've been growing grapes for maybe 12 years. You know, the initial premise when we started was to grow grapes. Actually, initially it was to grow grapes for home winemakers, and from there it was such a great idea. We were going to grow grapes for other wineries, and from there, what the hell are we going to do with all these grapes if nobody wants them? So the fates kind of led us in this direction.
The Zimmermans remodeled the barn, where they had previously kept hay and straw, into a beautiful winery and tasting room. Today, more than 30 wines are on the menu at Shade Mountain.
Honestly, we probably sell more Concord Niagara than anything. The people enjoy that. It's a regional taste, and they like to enjoy the sweeter wines. I mean, we do sell a lot of Cabernet and Chardonnay and Lemberger. I mean, we do sell a lot of the drier wines, but a lot of the local people like the sweeter ones. And I'm not going to argue with them.
With 60 acres of vineyards, it's no wonder that Shade Mountain is an award-winning producer of excellent Pennsylvania wines. In fact, Shade Mountain also produces several fruit wines, from apples, raspberries, elderberries, blackberries, cherries, strawberries, and peaches, all grown locally.
Shade Mountain Vineyards and Winery also offers tasting and tours, gift baskets, personalized labels, and is a popular stop along the Susquehanna Heartland Wine Trail. Running a winery may not have been the Zimmermans' original plan for their land, but thankfully, for Pennsylvania wine drinkers, it has become their passion. From Middleburg to Belleville and Brookmere Farm Vineyards. When wine tasting, it's important to sample many different varieties to determine your own personal likes and dislikes. In a similar fashion, Don Chapman, owner of Brookmere Winery in Belleville, made a career of sampling careers and discovered that his tastes are partial to winemaking.
I got tired of dealing with the hot metal scene and the Steelworkers Union for 16 years, and I said, I'm going to do something that's more fun. And I had the acres, and so in '81 I planted grapes in anticipation of opening a winery here. In fact, I've started other industries in a barn, and they went to a plant, like making handles for axes. Grew to 50 people, and I just wanted something different. I got about a 12-and-a-half-year attention span. But I'm beyond that now because I found something I like.
Having surpassed his self-described 12-and-a-half-year itch, Don's career in the wine industry officially began with the sale of his first bottle of Brookmere wine in 1984. With 8 different varieties of grapes growing in the vineyards, Brookmere's menu ranges from sweet to semi-sweet to dry. But what does the majority of Brookmere's visitors prefer?
85% sweet white, and it's been going on for 20 years that I've been involved. And I think it basically strengthens the point that most people that come in are not real serious wine drinkers. I teach them to appreciate the value of wine. I think it's never really regained its prominence since Prohibition. Beer has come back and the hard liquor came back, and of course that's on the decline, and I think beer sales are probably flat, but wine is on the upswing.
Perhaps the most prominent reason that wine is on the upswing is a theory known as the French paradox. The French diet, which consists primarily of bread and red meat, is typically not heart healthy. Yet by comparison, heart disease is much more prevalent in the United States than it is in France.
It's been proven through many university studies that wine is beneficial to your health. And so we don't really push that because we're not doctors, but we will quote what other people are saying that seem to be authorities on the subject.
And it's not just medical journals that Don likes to quote when discussing the positive points of drinking wine.
200 times it's quoted in the Bible. In fact, I have all of them. Somebody wants to throw it at me. And we have some come in once in a while and say, hey, you shouldn't be doing this. Oh, where does it say that in the Bible? Tell me the verse. I'd go get it. I said, look, it's 200 times in the Bible, and there's nothing negative. It says, don't drink too much, basically. Moderation, this is the key.
Apparently, plenty of people agree with Don's philosophy. On average, Brookmere entertains over 35,000 visitors from over 40 countries every year. After 20 years in the business, Brookmere Winery seems to have cured Don Chapman of his 12-year tolerance for careers.
I get a passion for wine, but I think I like to build things, and I think doing the wine thing, even if you have new products and doing new things like that, is helping to satisfy my ego in terms of being able to build something. Well, there's a piece of me in it. It might be tough to extract.
Next, it's the Groundhog Wine Trail and a visit to Luthersburg, home of Evergreen Valley Vineyards. Like the grapes in the vineyard, one Pennsylvania winery depends solely on the sun and the wind to survive. Evergreen Valley Vineyards, located in Luthersburg, Pennsylvania, opened in 1997 as the state's and possibly the nation's only winery to supply all of its own energy.
In this part of the country, power was prohibitive in price. And so we looked at it and we said, okay, I'll tell you what, we'll just make our own. When you do come out here, you're going to see a bunch of solar panels. You're going to see us storing the energy in battery banks, and you're going to see us using it in winemaking. And the secret in our part is twofold. The first one is because we're a traditional wine operation, we don't use gobs of electricity. Some wineries use enormous amounts of power. We're not one of them. Secondly, we happen to just purely, and I won't say by accident, but by coincidence, we're sitting in one of the best wind sites in the area. The valley we planted, after much head scratching, happens to have enormous amounts of wind blowing through it. This dries the fruit, it keeps it from rotting. It's all the good things we picked for the vineyard in the first place. But it was after we got that ridiculous price for power and said, let's make our own, that we said, hey, guess what? When you've got wind like that, you could tie a string on a brick and fly it like a kite. Why don't we just put up some windmills?
Besides the lack of conventional power, the land on which Evergreen Valley's vineyards were planted is unique in itself, and that leads to the distinct character of Evergreen Valley's award-winning wines.
Our selection of a site here, we've picked deliberately, it's actually a strip mine site. We've picked strained, rough mineral soil. It's not really fertile. It's, if you walk through Burgundy, you pick up this rough chalk on the ground, you can grind it together, you can, if you're wild, you can lick a rock, and you're going to taste elements in common with the wine and the soil. And we crop and we grow and we do everything we can to bring the flavor of our sort of a flinty mineral element and a little bit of a hint of vanilla, that's our flavor, to come up into our grapes.
That flavor, distinctly Pennsylvania and distinctly Evergreen Valley, also has a European taste to it as well.
We keep that crop small and we focus that flavor as much as we can. And these are all things that smack of Europe. Our wine style, when we finish it, it's dry but not aggressively so. We're not really trying to create a wine from our memory or style. You know, we don't really blend wine. There's regions of the world that make their trade doing that. But we're that pure varietal, straightforward, what comes out of our wine press, it's hand-picked fruit.
In addition to the incredible wines, Evergreen Valley Vineyards offers events such as Wine Appreciation Night, where visitors can sample wines from all over the world and compare them with those of Pennsylvania. Tasting and tours are always available, and Harvest Time offers opportunities for visitors who want to try their hand at picking. But in the end, it's not the tours or the events or the ecologically friendly power sources that make Evergreen Valley Vineyards a truly unique Pennsylvania winery.
You would taste the rocks. And that flavor is our flavor, is a wonderful thing to put in a glass and hand someone. And say, here it is. You know, this place, sure, in the year 2003, not a lot to look at yet. We're young, we're growing, but it's already wine. And that wine in that glass speaks for us. And it's who and what we are. You know, it's what we've given our lives to.
From Luthersburg, we're off to the winery at Wilcox. Try something new. Never be afraid to search for what you want. These are solid pieces of advice for the novice wine drinker, and they are the mottos on which the winery at Wilcox was founded.
I like to do things differently than other people, and this allows me to create wines that I can't buy. We started making the wine because I couldn't buy what I liked.
After working 15 years in corporate America, Mike Williams decided that an investment in himself, an investment in his culture, would be more profitable, both personally and professionally. That's how the winery at Wilcox began, and it has been growing ever since.
With some guidance from a lot of good winemakers in Pennsylvania and some friends, we learned how to make wine that people liked. And the journey began. We started with a grand plan to buy tanks at 3 years and to add on to our building in 5 years, and that plan was scrapped in 6 weeks. And and we bought 20 tanks in our first 4 months and started our first addition on our building 9 months later, and we've been adding on and building since. So,
adding on may be somewhat of an understatement. In fact, since the winery at Wilcox opened in 1994, they have added 4 other locations within Pennsylvania and 1 in Ohio. Tasting rooms and shopping malls throughout Pennsylvania also make the wares of the winery at Wilcox more accessible to everyone.
But for those who are fortunate enough to visit the original location, tasting and tours add flavor to the experience. With approximately 32 wines on their menu, the winery at Wilcox is sure to have something to please every palate. After doing more than enough of the right things, year after year, harvest after harvest, Mike Williams has stayed his original course.
the best thing in life is right around the corner. I just have to keep trying and keep working. So eventually I'm going to find the best wine in the world. I just have about another 100 million to go.
We return to the Lake Erie region, home of Mazza Vineyards. We've come full circle in our journey, back to Northeast Pennsylvania. But to tour Mazza Vineyards, you might think you were back in the old country.
Actually, our family came to this country from Italy back in the mid-50s, and we had a 40-acre farm in southern Italy and naturally grew grapes amongst other crops. We moved to Long Island, New York, and back in those days they were just still growing potatoes out there. They didn't have much of a wine industry then. And when we moved out to this part of the country, the Lake Erie region, specifically Harbor Creek Township, we began growing grapes again, and ultimately our interest peaked in home winemaking, and that eventually evolved into a commercial enterprise in 1972.
The Mediterranean style of the building is reminiscent of wineries found in Italy, and also therefore reminiscent of the Mazza family's heritage. But don't expect to find Italian-style wines at Mazza Vineyards. Instead, Mazza has gained fame as a producer of excellent Germanic-style wines, such as Riesling.
So our Riesling is perhaps what we're best known for, in addition to our ice wine of Vidal Blanc. The reason I think we do such a good job with the white wines in the Germanic style is, first of all, the growing conditions. I think we have ideal conditions in this part of the state for those types of wines.
In addition to producing incredible Riesling, Mazza Vineyards has also gained fame for its ice wine. Mazza was the first winery in Pennsylvania to produce ice wine, which involves harvesting the grapes later in the year once the fruit has frozen, thus concentrating the flavor to produce a sweet dessert wine.
Education is also a key ingredient in the success of Mazza Vineyards. Bob takes special interest in ushering his tours throughout the facility, teaching his customers about making wine and, of course, consuming wine.
That's really what we're geared to do, is not only just sell wine here. Our facility is geared towards educating either the wine consumer or perhaps prospective wine consumers. There are excellent wines, truly very good quality wines being produced in Pennsylvania. Very few people know those wines. It's our job to increase the awareness of those wines and at the same time keep improving the quality of Pennsylvania wines so they can compete and are accepted generally across the world.
With their commitment to excellence and to education, Mazza Vineyards truly offers a glimpse of the old world in Northeast Pennsylvania. With more than 75 wineries in the great state of Pennsylvania, it would be impossible to visit them all during this program. But we hope that we've given you a significant taste of what Pennsylvania has to offer. During our journey, we've learned that Pennsylvania wines run deeper and more vibrant than just reds and whites. Rather, Pennsylvania wines are colored with the touching stories of families overcoming odds, friends working together, and self-starters who never let obstacles obstruct their vision. We've learned that the flavor of our culture is every bit as rich as those of France, Germany, and other winemaking regions around the world. As you set off on your own journey to experience Pennsylvania wineries, first, raise your glasses to the people, the places, and the history you're bound to see along the way. May your journey bring the tender buds of friendship, and may your harvest always yield the fruits of delicious memories. Funding for experienced Pennsylvania wineries was made possible by the Pennsylvania Public Television Network, the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture, Pennsylvania Tourism, and by the Pennsylvania Wine Association.